Hello YouTube! Recently I spent a ton of hours writing this super long guide to Dragonic Resonance, but I know one thing to be true, and that's that the only thing that a Yu-Gi-Oh player hates more than playing Yu-Gi-Oh is reading. So I wanted to take some time and just kind of go over some of the highlights of this article. The full thing will be in the description if you want to check it out afterwards for more detail. So first, I decided to start off and just try to sell everybody on the deck. I don't think Dragonic Resonance needs any introduction for players that are veterans of Rush Duel Links. However, it has fallen off significantly in the recent weeks. But don't let people think that that's because it is no longer competitive. The ban list cannot stop this deck. The release of Shield and Sword has not stopped this deck. It is very competitive. If you go ahead and look at the tournament results on Duel Links meta, you'll find that basically every tournament has 2 or 3 people entering with the deck, and somehow one of them always ends up in the top 4. Apart from that, Dragonic Resonance of course has one key unique feature, and that is Dragonic Slayer's ability to destroy back row. With the release of the level cap expansion, there are now a lot more ways to remove spell and trap cards in the format, but none of them are stapled on a monster effect. So Dragonic Slayer still has a really good reason to make a case for itself as one of the best monsters in the format. Additionally, Dragonic Resonance is the deck that does everything. Slayer can destroy your spell and traps, Twin-Edged Dragon can attack twice, breaking through your board or getting in for 3,000. Dragonic Pressure lets them OTK you out of nowhere, and they can even play a mid-range control strategy using some trap cards to back up their Slayers and generate advantage over time. And even more, the deck is somewhat affordable. Obviously, it's not going to beat out running just the pure structure decks, but you can start playing Resonance with as little as 1 run of the first main box. The deck gets better the more you have, but it's a good deck that can grow with you on your Duel Links journey. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the deck. We have, of course, 3 Dragonic Slayer for a fully fleshed out version because it is the main boss monster. Then we also have Gravity Pressed Dragon. This is a card that actually had stopped seeing use previously, and that's because we were running Bunker Strike, and having Slayer, Bunker Strike, and sometimes a Dragias was just too many high levels. However, after the hit of Bunker Strike on the Forbidden and Limited list, Gravity Pressed Dragon is back with a vengeance. Notably, even though players weren't running it before, Gravity Pressed Dragon does do something that Bunker Strike does not, and that's provide a way to clear opposing defense position Yami rulers after a delay directive. You can debuff it to 1800, summon your Gravity Pressed Dragon, and then swing over with your 2000 or 1900 attack point monsters to clear Yami ruler and keep your momentum going. Triad Drago is another way to get you extra cards alongside the Sports Dragon package, which we are not featuring here as some players actually have decided to cut it after the Limit 3. Twin-Edged Dragon is our premier board breaker, and these 6 vanilla monsters are just overall high value monsters in the deck. They go up to level 7 or higher when paired with a skill, enabling Slayer, and you basically just get to push in a bunch. And of course, Widespread Ruin is Widespread Ruin, and every deck in the game needs to be running it. We're going to go over the Limit 3 cards next, and personally, my recommendation is to run 2 copies of Sports Dragon Pitcher, and then a copy of Phoenix Dragon for most builds. However, Bunker Strike does actually have a use case. If you're running 2 to 3 copies of Dragonic Pressure in your list, you're playing a more combo heavy version. And when you have that, you really need to be digging for your combo pieces, setting up the Sports Dragon Pitcher. So I would run 1 Bunker Strike and 2 pitchers in a heavy pressure combo build. Multi-Strike Dragon Dragias is also obviously just one of those cards that wins games on its own, so I can't fault anyone who just wants to run it at 1 or sometimes even 2 copies. However, if you're running any more than 1, the Sports Dragon package does have to be slimmed down. But I've been testing, and there are actually some ways you can make this work. So I'm not going to go over every single card that can be included in the deck. You can go ahead and just check out the article if that's what you want. But I want to call out a couple of things. First is Draco the Tiny. This is a card not very many people are playing. However, we will find that with the Beast Engine, there are a ton of decks ending with random 1300 attack monsters on their boards regularly. And by running Draco the Tiny alongside your Triad Drago, you're actually pretty likely to leave a monster in defense mode going into your next turn. And if you are able to keep a monster alive, that's just as good, or actually, it's even better than using the Sports Dragons, as now you don't have any attack restrictions on your turn. But there's another way to guarantee you have a monster on your board, and that is with Music Princess's Recital. I don't have a picture of it here, but you can tell by the text that it's a card I think is really worth more consideration than it has been seeing. As long as your opponent does not summon exactly a Dragius or Twin-Edged Dragon, if you set 3 monsters, Music Princess's Recital acts as a 4th monster. So you pop it on the final attack of their turn, and now on your next turn, you are guaranteed to have 1 monster on your board, generating advantage in a sense. And that's going to be that extra card you need to get out your double boss boards. Or if you don't have 2 bosses, the extra card can be used to fuel things like Twin-Edged Dragon. I have a few different example lists. So we have the mid-range variant, which is probably the one I've played the most of after the Forbidden Unlimited list. You use Ancient Rise Dragon to get that 3000 attack point value, and you use barriers to protect yourself. The combo variant, as you can see, I included a copy of Bunker Strike, just like I mentioned, because you're digging for pressure and the Sports Dragons as fast as possible. And having the Bunker Strike is another high-level monster that works with the pressure combo, letting you hit in for your big 4800 damage combo. Summon out Slayer and Bunker Strike using the Sports Dragons, and then plop down Dragorite. Dragonic Resonance will boost them both up by 500 each, and the low restriction on the Sports Dragons does not matter because they are now level 8. An aggro variant is running a couple of copies of Dragius, cutting the Sports Dragons entirely. To handle this, we are using Draco the Tiny and Music Princess's Recital to keep ourselves with monsters on board coming into our turn. It might seem weird to be running a 1400 defense monster, 0 attack, in an aggro deck, but it's pretty good at actually getting your bosses on board. We also have the 1 copy of Dragonic Pressure to close out games after our Dragius lowers the opponent's life points. And then finally, I included a little budget option that is just 1 run of each box, allowing players to get a quick start with the deck and then modify it as they get more cards. I do want to actually talk about this Triad Drago play that I see a ton of players making on ladder. Sometimes your opponent will have a boss monster on board and you have Triad Drago but no boss of your own. You can summon the Triad Drago in attack mode to try to drop into the boss monster you need to win the game. However, players on ladder are doing this way more than they should. If the opposing boss is not Dragius and you're not expecting one on the next turn, you should just set your monsters. Sometimes you do have to just go for the Desperado, hope you draw a high level, and scoop if you don't get it. But stop doing this play if you're not against a Dragius stack. You're probably just going to die. I finished things off with some matchup information. For example, in the Royal Level section, I talk about leaving a Sports Dragon pitcher in defense mode after reviving it with Slugger. That way, Heavy Metal's effect is targeting a 0 attack, level 1 monster, allowing you to protect your bosses with the barrier or whatever else you have, rather than losing a bunch of life points to Slayer popping a card like Dragorite. Again, if you want to check out the article, feel free to find the link in the description, or check out one of the videos on screen to see more content. Thank you for watching.